Welcome, everyone. I'm Sharon Beck, president of the Chicago Club. During the pandemic, we have been providing monthly shows such as trips, comedy, and music on Channel 6. We hope that it will not be too long before we open again in Clubhouse 5. Until then, we will continue our programs, and we hope that you enjoy them. So stay safe, stay well, and hopefully we will see each other soon.
Hi, this is Bernie, your travel guide. Listen very closely and you will hear a sound that is music to my ears. It's the sound of the bus engine purring and ready to leave on another Chicago Club trip. I've been patiently waiting for you to board this empty bus, and it looks like we're almost ready to offer you another great travel adventure. The big question is, are you ready to travel? Please send me an email so I can convince our club to start planning some actual trips. Until we can travel together on the bus, we're offering virtual events airing on Village Television so we can share with everyone a sample of what is offered by the Chicago Club to all residents of Laguna Woods. This month, Hoppy, Dorothy, and Carmen are taking you on a virtual tour of the Leo Carrillo Ranch and a couple of wineries. Leo was best known as Cisco's partner Pancho from the 1950s television series, The Cisco Kid. We miss you and are looking forward to the time when we can see you all at our monthly meetings at Clubhouse 5 and on our bus trips. Until then, stay safe and well.
Welcome to the Chicago Club Travel Show. I'm Dorothy Picella, and I'm your host for the day. And we have a very special trip planned for you. Now, as many of you know that you've been watching us, we've really tried to stay within 20 minutes of the village. But today we thought we'd try something very different. So we've come to northern San Diego County, and we have some great places for you to visit. Specifically, we're doing wineries, and we're doing ranches. So it's really important, and we love this whole environment, so we're so fortunate to have it. And we're only an hour away from the village. So I know it's not the usual 20 minutes. So our first stop today is Bernardo Winery. And this is a real treasure, northern San Diego County. We're absolutely so blessed to have Selena Roberts with us. And she is the general manager and chief operating officer for the winery. So I would like to introduce you to Selena, and she is hosting us today at this wonderful, wonderful village. And you're not going to believe where we're standing, and so I'm going to let her share with you the history, because this is her lineage and her family's blessing to all of us with the winery.
Certainly is.
So Selena,
yes.
well,
thank you so much for being here.
Ah,
We're delighted
we're thrilled.
that you're here.
We're thrilled.
This is, like you said, a little hidden gem in San Diego, North County. We've been here a long time, 132 years this winery has been in existence, this property. I'm going to show you a peek of the old history and a lot of the old charm. It's been very important to us as we've managed and kept this business going over 3 generations to keep the integrity and the real history of this property intact. That's been very important because we are truly a historic feature in San Diego. So that's really been important to us. So we're going to do a little walking tour of the buildings. This is actually the original, what we call crush pad for the winery. So back in the day, 20s, 30s, 40s, grapes would be brought in by mule team. They would be, the grapes would be placed and sorted in that rear bin back there. And then as you can see, there's a conveyor that goes up. That was a hand-driven conveyor. The grapes would actually go up the conveyor into the top and dump into what you see as a destemmer. It would take the stem off the grape up here, sort the grape, and actually dump them into troughs down here. So these are actually the original old concrete fermentation tanks down here.
My God.
And the wine would dump in once it started its process down into these tanks.
So Selena, what we're looking at is 132 years old?
This is a 100-year-old process. This was the original winemaking process here on the property, yes. Wow. Now, Amidst it, you see, additionally, 100 years of artifacts and fun things that have been placed on this property. I will tell you, most of it was used here, just like this old mule, what do they call this? Collar.
Yeah. Oh, collar.
Wooden collar. So a lot of these things were actually used here on the property, and most of them were, the fun things were placed by my stepfather, Ross Sr., who was the patriarch of our family, and my mom. In the evenings, they'd drive around with a glass of wine on the golf cart, put up a nail, and hang up another little artifact from here at the ranch. So that's some fun history, yes. But this is all original. And as we walk down here, this is also one of the tanks. This was actually one of the boilers for the distillery.
Oh, man.
This peaked building was actually where the brandy was distilled. This was the old original distillery.
Oh,
it's now my brother's office. So that's Ross Jr.'s office. But these buildings, all of this wood, everything is original. What we've done is kept the outside historical and modified the insides to, obviously for code reasons. But these are some of the original presses. These presses were used to actually press the grape, and you'll see the slat, obviously, that releases the juice. But this was the original presses. Here's another couple of them here. This one actually still has the press plate on it. And old scales and all of these fabulous old antiques that were used on the property for one reason or another. This is an old scale.
How long did this equipment stay in use?
This was probably through the 50s.
Wow.
And I may not be completely accurate on that. Ross could give more information on that. But I think that, obviously by that time they created better means. And
right.
we have the next stage in presses that were actually used in the next stage of the winemaking prior to what we have now, our existing cellar.
Right.
So we have some up there that were used. So there were stages in, the machinery, the quality of the machinery and the process that was done. But this is fun, right? This is
this is wonderful.
This is another old tank here that
look at this.
Fires were lit early in the morning at 5:30 a.m. to keep the fires going. And all of these, like I said, this is one of my favorite places on the winery is to walk down this path. This old barn here on the right, which is now a storage facility, the original glass windows, all this original old building here all the way down. It's just a fabulous demonstration and example of the history of the property.
Now, as we go through this, you've converted a lot of the historic buildings to some piece of retail to enhance your visitors' enjoyment.
Well, think about where we're located. We are quite a ways in off of what was then the 15 north-south from Los Angeles to San Diego.
Right.
So we were originally just two big iron gates at the front of the property, the long dirt road that went out to that north-south intersect, okay? So we were kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then Oaks North was built, the plus 55 senior community out front. And so that kind of, generated a little bit more business for us.
Okay.
It took us away from just being a winemaking and wine selling facility to having the opportunity for some retail.
Yes.
So what we did was we took a lot of these old buildings and we created tenant spaces out of them.
Yes.
And had little candle shops and little soap shops and all these little fun little arts and crafts shops that the community enjoyed. We actually at one time even sold hard alcohol in the tasting room, and there were vegetables and things sold on the property, and it was kind of the little neighborhood market, mercado if you will,
What I love about Bernardo is you're more than a winery.
We are.
You're a village.
We are. Yes.
And not only do you enhance the visit of your guests who came for the wine, but you're also supporting your local community with options to have a special visit to you.
Exactly. And that's the part of us that the marketing plan is we market ourselves as a destination property because we want people to come here and experience all of us.
Yes.
We don't want, when people hear Bernardo Winery, They think tasting room, which
Yes.
is very common, right? But we are so much more than that. When we get them here, we feel like we've captured an audience and they come back. Like you did.
Like
we were lucky to have you back.
We're
Exactly.
here.
Exactly.
We came back.
So let's
what else
walk
is
around
going on here now? Oh, how wonderful.
Well, this is our tasting room patio. Our tasting room is in here, and we'll, I think we'll go in there in just a second. I want to continue with the historical
Please,
part of this right now.
So unique.
So this is the front of the actual old winery, the original winery. And this was made with the old Italian flour slap plaster, and it's still intact. It's a beautiful, beautiful old building that we've kept. I can't tell you, I think about this all the time, and I think if the barrel room, which is what we call this, she's formerly known as the barrel room, if these walls could talk, the stories in the book she could write would be phenomenal. Okay, so we're here, as we were saying, in our historic barrel room, is what we call her. I was telling Dorothy earlier that I feel like if these walls could talk, the book
barrel room.
Yes. This is what we fondly refer to as the gem of the property, because it's the original winery, the original wine cellar. I say if the walls could talk in this beautiful old barn, what stories it would tell, it would probably fill a volume of books. So many things have happened in this barn. Back on the day when this was actually a working ranch in San Diego County, there was actually a team roping arena over here, and the cowboys would all come rope cattle twice a week, and they would all convene in here afterwards over who knows how many bottles of wine, and maybe a bottle of scotch in there too somewhere. Right. But we've had weddings, private events, you name it in here. And you noticed when we walked in how much cooler it is. It's a very hot day today. It's going to be 90 outside today, but it's probably a good 12 to 15 degrees cooler in this barn right now. Maybe a little bit humid. This is the way back in the day that they were able to thermostatically control the wine without technology and electricity and chilled tanks. If you notice, this barn is actually built 5 to 6 foot in the ground. So the pathway that we walked down, we came down kind of a sloped pathway. We're on more of a level ground here, and that's because it's built into the ground. The ground itself, the earth, helps cool the building and the walls. So it was very ingenious, right? It was one of those ingenious things. Now the tanks themselves, beautiful, gorgeous tanks. These are actually made of California redwood. They were brought down by rail car in the early 1900s and built in place by a French cooperage that was hired. So you'll see the original stanchions that they're sitting on look like they're going to collapse. They're actually very solid. But this is where the wine was brought into, and this was where the fermentation process happened in this actual redwood. So these are another historic part of the property. There's a kind of a pungent smell when you walk in, and it's very different depending on the time of year. We actually stored our 50-year-old aged port in here for quite some time, but there is also a near 60-year aged balsamic vinegar in this tank, which you can smell that aroma, right? We keep working on bottling it, and we haven't gotten to that point yet. We bottle it for ourselves. We bottled it and sold it for ourselves, but there's a lot of it, and it's really, really good. As for the rest of the tanks, they're empty, and they're just for people to enjoy and on display. We once in a while will use them for different things here on the property, but as part of the aging process, they kind of termed themselves out on being able to be used in the winemaking, only because they had held so many different varietals over the years, and the redwood just it wasn't creating the right process in the winemaking and creating the right wines. So thus, we created that gorgeous wine cellar up top.
We are in the very special part of Bernardo Winery. We're actually in the winery, and it's the newest part of the winery. But the important part of today is to be here. So we're here with Ross this afternoon, and we're so excited to have you because he's a special part of the history of this winery. So Ross is third generation. And he's going to take us through the winery, actually, and see some very special things. So first, tell us about your heritage as you as the winemaker in this winery.
It's a pleasure to have you both. Thank you very much for being here. Honestly, I love sharing info about the winery and about wine and about just the heritage here. the culture of old California and the Sicilian immigrants that came here to make a life. So yeah, third generation. We're 132 years old this year as a company, one of the oldest continuously operating wineries in California. We've been very fortunate to be in one of the most beautiful parts of the world. My grandfather bought the winery in 1927, and he passed it along to my father, and then my father passed it along to me as well. And I've had the fortune of working with my two sisters and my mom here since 2008, running the place, which is really cool. But my passion is in the winery. My passion is making the wine and sharing the wine with all these wonderful people that come and visit here and love the history and things like that. And like you were saying, this is a very important building.
Yeah.
This is our new winemaking facility. 132 years old. Back in the day, they made wine basically the same way, but just very different. Not so much different equipment, but equipment that took a lot more work to make it very easy. To explain, we're now using really nice stainless steel tanks, refrigeration. We use American oak barrels. Back in the day, they substituted the stainless steel tanks for California redwood tanks.
Yes.
So really, it was really nice to be able to modernize the facility. So we modernized our wine production, and our quality. So we're going to do a little bit of a barrel taste today. If you guys are okay with that, I'd love to share.
Thirsty.
Yeah, I love that. I'd love to share some of the wine with you, and I'm going to grab our wine thief.
Okay. So we're going to taste it straight out of the barrel.
We're going to taste it straight out of the barrel.
This is a first. All the wineries I've ever visited, I've never had anything straight out of the barrel, Ross.
So the long and short of it is that wine out of the barrel isn't finished yet.
Okay.
Right? Part of being a winemaker is being able to know when a wine is ready to be bottled. So throughout its life, its maturation life, so we get grapes in from the field, they go through fermentation, and then they mature in oak barrels like this.
Okay.
Part of being a winemaker is you have to understand when this is ready to be bottled, when it won't mature anymore, when it won't get any better, per se. There's a lot of chemical reactions that are going on in this guy, and there's a lot of testing that can be done chemically, but nothing substitutes just tasting it. And your human perception and the ability to taste and enjoy is really wonderful. Now, so this is a fun little blend in a very small barrel, as you can see. This is a half barrel.
Okay.
This means that the oak concentration for this portion of this wine is double, because it's half the volume, but a lot of oak. Now, this in a beaker. This is a really great part to start with, right? Now, the old winemaking adage, right? If it looks good, smell it. If it smells good, taste it, right?
Right.
Very simple.
Right.
So beautiful color, nice and inky, very clear. It has a really great viscosity, so it moves really well. A lot of people ask me, the legs on the glass, is that important? Not so much. It does indicate a few things, but it's not an indicator of quality.
Okay.
So put your nose in there. I get a lot of really amazing fruit compote, blueberry, blackberry. I also get a little bit of vanilla.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Wonderful. Isn't that rich?
It's so rich.
It's so
now,
rich.
Which one are we
So this is actually a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon.
Okay.
Which we don't really typically grow in San Diego.
Right.
In California, of course, in Northern California, it's the most popular wine grape on the planet.
Right.
But in San Diego, our climate doesn't lend to the Cabernet Sauvignon plant as well as Northern California does.
Okay.
However, in a blend with Syrah and Aglianico is a southern Italian varietal that we grow in San Diego, and it works really well. Of course, southern Italy and San Diego have a lot of similarities in our climate. which is why it's so beautiful here and so beautiful there, right?
Right.
The Aglianico, the Syrah, and the Cabernet Sauvignon blended together creates this really wonderful, wonderful wine. Now, it is not ready to be bottled, so you just experienced a wine that hasn't matured all the way yet, and it's like so full-bodied, and it's just inky, and it has that really great tannin on your tongue. Those kinds of things will mellow out, but we've just experienced it before it goes into the bottle. Now we need to know as winemakers, once it goes into the bottle, we need to know what it's going to do in the bottle.
So how often do you taste this barrel before you make the decision to bottle?
So this is a 2020. In the first year of its existence, year of its existence in a barrel, we might only try it once a month, once every six, maybe 8 weeks.
Okay.
Once it gets a little bit closer to a year and a half in the barrel,
I see.
a year and a quarter, year and a half, then it's almost every other week.
Okay.
And that's just to kind of make sure everything's cool. You start to notice a change relatively faster, later in the process. So, but it's fun, I mean, how hard of a job is it to come through here and have to taste through these 100 barrels every
day
weeks,
and stay healthy
and still be able to drive home, right?
Drive home.
That is
so how many barrels are in the winery?
We have 100 right now.
100 barrels.
We have 100 barrels right now of reds. That are a mix between the 2020 vintage and the 2019 vintage.
Okay.
The 2019 vintage is obviously coming up on the time when we're going to start to think about bottling them.
Okay.
So my enologist and I, Matty, he's really great. Him and I will start to take samples from each of these barrels, take them into the lab. We get to taste them. We do a little bit of, we test the alcohol, we test the acid a little bit, and just to see when it's ready to go in the bottle. And then it's going to sit in the bottle and age in the bottle for between 6 months to a year and a half.
Wow. So the wine I just tasted will not be in a bottle for another
2 years.
2 years. Wow.
A year and a half, 2 years.
See ya in 2 years.
See you then.
See
exactly.
You then. That's unbelievable.
That's great, right?
That's great.
You have to be very patient.
That's right. Now, the wine you produce here, I know you have a wonderful wine tasting room that we will be visiting.
Yes.
But do you sell retail? Do you have wine clubs? How do you distribute and sell your wine?
We are very fortunate to have a lot of people that come to Bernardo Winery to enjoy our wines.
Right.
So we only sell through our tasting room.
Okay.
And our restaurant. So you come to our restaurant, you can order a bottle of our wine. You come to our tasting room, you can taste a flight of wines, and then you can choose your wine to take home.
Right.
We have a lot of really phenomenal case discounts and things like that. If you buy 3, 6 or 12, you get discounts. And then right on the horizon, we're going to be starting our wine club back up again.
Great.
We were so popular. Our wine club was so popular that we actually had to fold it. And kind of offer the wine club discounts to everybody because everybody just kind of wanted it, and it was a thing. So we wanted to be a little bit more kind of family oriented, and so we offered the wine club discounts to everybody. But wine clubs are so popular that we're going to be starting one again as well. So
I have a question for you. Let's go back to your history for a second because I do love the history, and we're going to talk about that throughout our visit. But your grandfather bought the vineyard in 1937, if I remember.
27.
27.
Yeah.
And then before that, what was the vineyard?
So the Bernardo Winery was founded in 1889 by 5 Sicilian partners.
Okay.
Of which my grandfather met them when he came to San Diego. He immigrated from Sicily in the late teens, early 20s. And of course, as you know, 1920 Prohibition hit. So to be looking to buy a winery, during Prohibition was a little bit ridiculous.
Right.
However, my grandfather owned a couple of bars and nightclubs in Tijuana. And Tijuana, of course, was a really hot happening spot in the middle of Prohibition. So on a hunting trip in 1927, he came across this property and, of course, knew and met the owners. Okay. And, of course, the owners would like to wash their hands of it because it was during Prohibition. How do you own a winery? So my grandfather moved in, and of course, we were one of the last wineries to survive through Prohibition in San Diego. And of course, we were ready to go to make wine the first year that Prohibition was repealed in 1932.
Great story. Great.
Our distillery number here, just for a little factoid, is number 8.
Oh.
That's it.
That's
We're
it.
number 8.
8.
So the distillery numbers now are up in the hundreds of thousands.
Wow.
But we are number 8. We are the 8th distillery license that they gave out right after Prohibition. So kind of fun. Our bonded winery number is 3567, which is very low. Now they're in the like 250,000s. So very low. When they see that, when we file things, they look at that number and go, I think that's wrong. Like, no, it's not wrong. We've been here that long. Yeah.
Great. Well, great. And congratulations. I can't wait for this to hit the bottle.
Thank you,
but I'll
right?
have to come back in the
I hope you do. There's a lot of wines on the shelf to enjoy.
In the meantime, I'll find something else to drink.
Exactly.
Great. Well, you've been wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, we're here in front of the bag cellar, which is another one of the old original buildings of the winery that was retrofitted to accommodate a retail space. This is a fun spot because this features one of the fun tools that was originally used on this property. This is actually an antique brick machine, and these are all the brick forms on this building that fit on this machine. My 21-year-old nephew actually got this machine working again last year. So this is fun. People love to see this kind of thing because it's truly original and part of our history. Hi, how are you? No. This is one of our shops. This is the bag cellar. And what we've done is we've brought in retailers that have, again, something different that they have that people haven't seen, unique, handcrafted. And we want people to feel like they truly are in a boutique setting here at the Village Shops. This is one of my selfish indulgences here because I'm the family member that doesn't drink wine, but I do love chocolate. We opened this fabulous little sweet shop that features local confectioners and chocolatiers from all over. So, welcome to our tasting room. This is actually, a favorite room of mine here at the winery because this was originally the stables, the horse stables that was converted into the tasting room many decades ago. This is where all of our guests experience tasting our wines. We do by the flight, which is a selection of 3, sell by the glass, and also by the bottle in here. And everything on the wine list is actually produced here on property by our winemaking team. We have a fabulous selection of wines, reds and whites, sweets and dries. And this is where people come in and make their selections. We also offer so many retail opportunities on here on property. We sell branded Bernardo Winery product, and then also have all of these fabulous little shops on property that offer a variety of boutique products. Many small-owned business here, small women-owned businesses here. During Friday Farmers Market, we have many vendors here that this is all handmade product that they offer on Fridays as part of our farmers market. Beautiful glass. This is glass earrings, jewelry, Darlene, and then as well as our shops that are here year-round that are part of our village shops in our courtyard. We have tenants, some tenants that have been here 10, 15 years, 20 years, and again, a variety of beautiful things. This is our courtyard. Originally, this was just the little dusty path in from the main entrance of the 2 iron gates, where mule teams could come in, horse and rider, and then eventually we kind of transformed this. But let's take a little walk down this way. This is one of our shops, one of our buildings that we transformed into a shop area. Fabulous gallery. And what's really fantastic about this is we love to feature artists and handcrafted products. Bob and Teresa are actually artists. They make a lot of the product in here, but they also have a studio which they give classes weekly on mosaic, painting, all kinds of beautiful things. So this is really a treasure. Love this. And then I think it would be really nice to show you a glimpse of our vineyard in one of our venues. There's so many fabulous little nooks and crannies to kind of walk through and explore here on the property. But this area is where we actually host parties, private events. This venue is fondly called Vito's Park, after our fabulous favorite uncle that made sure that the lawns were mowed every Thursday prior to the family gatherings out here on Thursday evenings. But this is beautiful, and we have, again, weddings, private parties and events. Some vineyards here on the right. Most of the vineyards you see here on the property, we do pick grape from them in the fall. But because we have been condensed now from the original hundreds of acres this ranch was, down to our 11 acres of existence now, we purchase most of our grapes from San Diego County growers to keep San Diego County on the label, and to also support local farming. That's a very big thing for us. We really are, when it comes down to it, farmers.
Yeah.
We start as farmers. Everything here for us starts at the ground.
That's right.
So,
Got it. Thank you.
how you doing, Mike? Did you have a good day today?
Don't you know that it's a fool who plays it cool by making his world a little cold?
Yes.
They roast all their own coffees. They have fabulous rolling roast.
Oh my word.
All the coffee beans are single origin. They come in from local farms.
Oh my
from
God.
farms, South
Don't
America.
let me down.
This is fun. Yeah. It's just, we said it happens on Friday.
Yeah.
So that's perfect.
Great. That's great.
But we've done a ton, Selena.
Have you? Okay, probably.
We've not missed anything too much.
And you want to begin. You're waiting for someone to.
We have a special surprise here today. We've come all the way down from the village. And guess who followed us? The Chicago Club Board. They followed us all the way down here. And look, they're having lunch. Hey, Chicago Club. Everybody say hi. Say hi. We're drinking, we're eating. Hey! Woo!
This is actually one of the most important places here on the property. There's two delightful locations here. The first is Manzanita Roasting on the right. This is actually owned by my sister and her husband, who is a master roaster. What's special about Manzanita is they have a fabulous Loring roaster. Everything's done here on property. And they actually purchase their beans by single origin farmers from all over the world. So it makes it special, unique, and really very high quality roasted coffees. Then on the left here, we actually have our kitchen at Bernardo Winery. This is where all the magic happens, the culinary magic happens here on the property. We have a fabulous master chef who actually has recreated recipes that are featured in our cookbook by our Aunt Nina and my mother, Veronica. So this is Italian based. Our pastas are made here daily on property with our own Italian pasta machine, as well as the semolina dough that's made for our hand tossed fire pizzas out of our Orno. So we actually have an old Italian Orno here that we make our own pizzas. Does that look great? Yes, everything's fired right here in our Orno. So they are literally hand tossed, hand prepped, and fresh right out of the Italian oven. It's fantastic. Okay, we are here in the beautiful Rancho Bernardo Historical Society Museum. This is a treasured part on this property, and we're so proud to be a part of it. This was something that was a dream of Ross Sr. to make this happen on this property eventually. And I cannot tell you the hard work that's been put into this by so many people, like this beautiful lady standing here next to me. Raynell has been a part of the community in Poway for decades, safe to say, right? 1982. And Raynell and I actually met 2008 or so when I took over as general manager of the property for my family. Raynell was working locally in publishing, and we did a lot of work together in trying to market this winery and get it back on the map. She's since retired and become a docent here for the museum, but has been a part of making all this happen and literally has helped put the story of this, you know, our valley and the ranches and all of the history, even the kumeyaay, here on these walls. So thank you, Raynell. You're a treasure, and we love you.
Hello, Chicago Club. Hoffy here. I'm really enjoying the Bernardo Winery. I'm tasting a little bit of their beautiful Burgundy, their oldest grape. It's very, very tasty. So we are in the Bernardo, what's the name of the museum? The Bernardo Historical Society. And this is a mud wagon. It was like a local taxi in the late 1800s. And it was called a mud wagon because, as you can see, there are no windows. So when you rode in it, you got dusty or muddy, especially in the spring and the winter. But it's better than walking, and if you didn't have a horse, this was your mode of transportation. And I think it would be quite romantic in this day to ride on one of these in some beautiful county park, wouldn't it? So this is the mud wagon that went from San Diego to Escondido. Yeah, it's a beautiful example of history. All right, we're going to come over here. They have a beautiful timeline of the history of this area. So remember, before 1769, California, for about 10,000 years, was inhabited by Native American groups. There were over 100 autonomous groups. And then Juan Cabrillo comes in 1542, and he comes up and down the coast. And then enter Junipero Serra and Gaspar de Portola. So this is the Spanish era and the founding of the missions. And this is when they first established the land grants. And then when Mexico broke away from Spain in 1821, California became part of Mexico. And the people who were born here were called Californios. And then we had the Mexican-American War in 1846. Most of the battles were fought in central and eastern Mexico, but a few of the battles, which Dorothy described, were fought in this San Diego area. But unfortunately for Mexico, they lost the war, and they lost, oh my gosh, they lost California, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and part of Kansas. Mexico lost 1/3 of their territory. So from 1850 on, this became part of California.
There's a snake.
The Native American tribe that lived here was called the Kumeyaay, and I thought this was a beautiful exhibit. This is a pine needle hat.
Okay, bye.
Quite a unique item. You can see the Native American woman wearing the pine needle hat, which I think is quite interesting. And you can see the mortar and pestle, the metate down there, where they ground acorns, because acorns were an important source of protein. Over here is a description of the battle that happened in the early part of the California campaign. It was the Battle of San Pasqual. General Kearny had traveled 2,000 miles from Texas, and that was such a long trip through the desert, he lost his horses. By the time he arrived in San Diego, he had only borrowed a few horses, and it was cold and foggy that day, and a lot of the rifles didn't fire because the gunpowder was wet. Okay, so I like this map because San Diego was an important route to Yuma, Arizona, and a lot of the stagecoach and horses came up from Yuma through Carrizo all the way to Warner's Ranch. They could go up to Los Angeles, and the Butterfield stagecoach went through Temescal Valley to Los Angeles.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
And it was my
and
pleasure.
You are a great ambassador of the winery, and your father and grandfather would be proud.
Well, I hope so. I hope so.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Okay, we are at the Leo Carrillo Ranch Historic Park, and Leo Carrillo was a very prominent actor and preservationist and a rancher. In fact, he was one of the most famous Hispanic actors of the 20th century. So when we look at his life here, he was from a prominent Spanish family, 3 of his relatives were in the original Portola expedition back in 1769. Other relatives were actually the governor of Alta California. His great uncle was the mayor of Santa Monica. So he was what you call a Californio, a person of Mexican descent who was born in California. He started out, actually, he got a degree in engineering, and then he became a cartoonist for the Herald Examiner. But he loved acting, and he became an actor on Broadway in vaudeville. Then he became famous for the movies. As an actor, he did over 90 movies. But his most famous TV program was The Cisco Kid. It was the most popular TV series of the time, and the first one in color. He played Pancho next to Duncan Ronaldo, who was the Cisco Kid. That played in the 1950s. Leo has 2 stars on Hollywood Boulevard, by the way. He loved horses. He was a great horseman, and he loved ranching. His family had a big ranch in Santa Barbara County, so he wanted to buy a ranch close to the beach with lots of open space. So in the 30s, he bought this beautiful Rancho de los Quijotes, and he raised cattle here, but it was mostly a retreat for him to escape the crowded situation in Hollywood. So he was definitely a rancher. Also, he was very much a conservationist. He was a parks commissioner. He was responsible to help designate Anza Borrego State Park and Hearst Castle. So to thank him for his work in conservation, they named Leo Carrillo State Beach in Malibu for Leo Carrillo. And he was so famous in California that Governor Edmund G. Pat Brown proclaimed him Mr. California, and they named the state beach after Leo Carrillo. So he wrote a book called The California I Love. And I'm proud to say my grandmother was born in Mexico, and when I was a little kid, I was 7 years old, Leo Carrillo lived in the Santa Monica Canyon, and I used to look at his beautiful Spanish colonial home, and in fact I caught frogs in front of it. And one day my grandmother saw Leo and said, "Leo, come over to the car, meet my grandson." So Leo leaned over. It was my grandparents drove a Packard, and Leo leaned in and he said, "Hello, Billy, I wish I could hug you." So Leo Carrillo wanted a ranch with an adobe, and this homestead was built by the Kellys, and they put wood siding around it. And when Leo Carrillo found out that it was an adobe, he said, "I've got to buy this property." So he stripped away the wood, and he restored the adobe, and he built his beautiful hacienda, as you can see here, and we'll take a look at it in just a second. This property, he stripped away the wood from the homestead, made it 1 story, and he restored this beautiful patio and restored the adobe. And you can see this is typical of the Spanish colonial look. It's an L shape with a beautiful courtyard. The bougainvillea is very appropriate, the red tile. Sarah, when was this built? 1930s?
Yeah, Leo bought the ranch in 1937 and was done by 39.
Nice. And this is absolutely beautiful patio that they restored. And there's a cabana in the back with a pool, and they have weddings here. This is a gorgeous day. Thank you for treating me. Thank you so much. So Leo also put in a pool and a cabana with a weather vane, and this is a very popular place for weddings. And he threw a lot of parties with his famous Hollywood friends. Clark Gable would come here, and many other stars. Okay, so Leo's wife Dee Dee wanted a separate room in the house, and he built this called Dee Dee's house. And this is where she would put some of her artifacts. And you can see it's Pueblo style, which is typical of the Southwest, Native Americans. You can see the wood logs coming out. Those are called vigas. And this is typical of Pueblo style, and this is a particularly rustic one. So this is a good example of Pueblo style architecture. This is Dee Dee's house. So one of the cool things about Leo Carrillo Ranch Historic Park is that he tried to bring back the early Spanish and Mexican and Native American lifestyle. This is a prickly pear cactus, and on the cactus a bug grows, and this bug is called a cochinil, which is also called cochinilla in Spanish. When you squish it, it becomes a beautiful red dye. And the Native Americans would use this dye, you can see it on my hand, they would use this dye in dyeing their rugs. And you can see it's a very beautiful kind of ruby red. So next time you see a prickly pear cactus, grab the little white remnants of the bug,
squish it in your hand, and you can get as dark as you want to go. Isn't that wonderful? That's cochinilla. And by the way, my wife and I went to Oaxaca, and the Native Americans, the Indians in southern Mexico, harvest the cochineal in great quantities. They grind it up to make their serapes and their rugs and their tapestries. So I don't recommend putting it on your face, but look at my fingers. So this is cochineal. Isn't that cool?
Hey everybody, welcome to the third segment of our show. We've had so much fun today, and we're still looking for wineries. And I found one, still in Escondido. We're still 1 hour from the village, and this winery is absolutely beautiful. It's Orfila, and it's one of the best wineries around. So as we begin to go through the tour today, we have a very special day planned for us. So as I begin to go, you'll be able to see a lot of the things in the winery. Keep in mind, when we talk about wineries and California wines, a lot of people immediately think Napa Sonoma or Temecula. But we're not there. This is the San Pasqual Valley, northern San Diego County. And there are over 28 boutique small wineries here in the valley that have been producing wines since the 1800s. So as far as I'm concerned, it's the best kept secret in Southern California to come visit these wineries because they're great, the quality is wonderful. So we've arranged for a tour today of Orfila, and we're going to introduce to you our new best friend who's going to take us through the winery today and really show you the inner workings of this wonderful historic winery. So let's go meet Kevin. We're here with Kevin, the tasting room manager here at Orfila, and he's a real asset to the organization because he keeps all of us tasting.
That's right.
So Kevin, please share with us. We're so excited to be here. And
excited to have you today.
Thank you, and it's such a beautiful day. It's early morning. The tasting room isn't open till noon, and it's about 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right. So we're still a little bit before we start drinking.
That's right. So we're happy to have that. So share with us first off. Tell us about the history of the winery because we are in a historic place.
Yes, indeed. So 1973 was when the first vines were planted here at Orfila. Back at that time was San Pasqual Valley Winery. And then Thomas Yeager took that winery over I would say maybe 10 years after that or so. Right. It became the Thomas Yeager Winery. Then in 93, 94 is when the Orfilas bought it. The background of that is that Mr. Orfila actually the ambassador between Japan and Argentina to the United States. So to Argentina to Japan, Argentina to the United States. So he comes from a wine background. His family, maybe 3 generations at this point, I think. So they were going to go back there after his ambassadorship was over with. I believe he was thinking of going back, but they decided they want to stay in the United States. So they found this beautiful piece of property and took over. So again, they've been here since '94. And have built this beautiful place up to that at that point. Let's see, the first winemaker, Leon Santoros. He's the one that came here first with the Orfilas. He unexpectedly passed away, which was a very sad thing here. But, you know, as blessings come, Justin Munn came on board then, and he has built the winery to where it is today. His wines are
now, is
really
the ambassador
great.
still involved in the business?
A little bit. We see more Mrs. Orfila than we see Mr. He's 96 now.
Oh my goodness!
So he's still sharp as can be.
Great.
Just doesn't get around quite as much anymore. Right. But yes, he is still part of it. But Mrs. Orfila has stepped in as the GM, and she has been watching over, and we deal with her, we talk together, we make things work, so she's in and out much more.
Now I see all the vines, and how much property, how many acres does the vineyard have?
Yes, so the vineyard has a total of 70 acres.
Okay.
And we have planted 32 or 33, I believe, is where we're at now. We still have some area that we can plant, and I think they probably plan on doing some of that. We have several varietals, so what we have found here back in the day was that our soil and climate is very Mediterranean. So we grow mostly Rhone style grapes. So our whites are going to consist of Viognier, Roussanne, Marsanne. Our estate reds are going to be Cab Sav. Syrah is our signature grape here. We also do Montepulciano. So we have quite a nice variety of grapes growing here. We do about 100,000 pounds per year of fruit, and then we source out about another 100,000 pounds from other places. Pinot Noirs, for instance, grow better up north, so we bring the best grapes from the best regions to make the best wines. So, but all wines are made here, all of our wines.
So the vines look like they're starting to grow. It's May.
It is.
And so every time we come to visit here, it's getting better and better. So this is typical the way the vines would look in May?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, we're right on target. They did pruning just about a month ago, I believe, and then things as it got wet and a little warmer, we started seeing bud break, and now they're doing their thing. So
these vines will be ready to harvest in?
Yeah, we start around the month of August and then through October. So it's kind of a process, depending on the varietal.
These vines look a little skinny at the moment, but this is prime growing time.
Right.
So the vines will flourish and the grapes will grow.
Correct.
And then your team will come and harvest them.
That is right.
Okay.
That's and that's a process in itself. So that's a lot of fun. But a lot of the vines we have here, some of the old rootstock, for instance, they were growing Chardonnay here, and Chardonnay does not really grow well this far south. It's a little too hot. The skin's too thin to take that. So they actually used the process of grafting, and so they kept some of that nice, good rootstock that was established here, and a lot of that went into Cab variety.
Oh, so, wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, very fun.
Great. So the history of the winery then continues with the Orfila family. And the history, particularly to the valley, they're significant to their contribution.
Yes.
In terms of what we've been doing. So it's great to be able to do that. So what I'd like to do is now take us through the actual winery.
Okay.
And let's talk about how the process works, because a lot of our viewers haven't had a chance ever to tour a winery.
Oh, yes, for sure.
And my husband and I have been able to do this tour, and it's just spectacular. But it's boutique, it's small, it's unique. And so I would love for you to take us now and take a walk and walk us through the harvest.
We'll
Once
do it.
these little grapes get going.
Where do they go?
Where do they go?
They go to the back room. So
the back door. Let's go.
That's right. We'll do it. The guys
Great.
are picking away, and they put them in, and then the tractors can get them out of there.
And they pick by hand, don't they, Kevin?
Here we do.
Yes,
we
always.
do. We have no machines at all.
Right.
We pick by hand because that lets us know more about the fruit. We don't have as much things we don't want mixed in. That stays out there in the fields, and so we touch everything. And also the bins are designed that they're not too heavy, so you're not bruising the fruit underneath.
Yes.
Because once the fruit gets bruised, then the oxidation begins, and you don't want that process to happen until you're ready.
So then this is the crusher?
That is actually the destemmer.
Oh, destemmer. So walk us through the process. So we get picked.
Right.
And it goes into these tubs. These tubs, and then from the tub it goes to this equipment.
Up there, yes.
Okay.
So they run the destemmer. So it's like an old combine, if you were to think of that. So it disperses all of the unwanted materials, and that goes out one way, and then the grapes go the other way. So it's just like a combine. It does the same exact thing, really.
So when the grapes come out.
So here's where all the stems come out. This auger then shoves all the junk out of here, and we catch it. Then that goes into our compost pile. So we compost everything. Back to the fields it goes. That's right.
So now if I'm a grape, where am I right now?
Yeah, well, you're bruised. Yeah, you're going, wow, what's happening to me? Yeah, what a ride I'm having. Right, so that will go also into another tank. So we'll catch them again, probably in one of these guys.
Okay.
And then they'll actually take this to the press, which I'll show you that. So yeah, that's the next step. It goes into the press. And there's so many different techniques of that, whether you want skin included or stems included. Like we have some full clusters that we use that we don't destem. We actually use the process of full cluster. So that puts more tannins from the skin. The seeds are still, of course, there. Some of the stem is still there. You need to make sure the stem's nice and ripe. That way you don't have a bunch of green, so it's a very delicate process, but all of those are looked at and like, yes, that's what we want to use. So that does a lot of our ambassador series.
Yes. Oh,
so all those special, that's right, specially handled.
Okay, where do we go next?
Let's just go this way here.
Okay. The life of a grape.
That's right.
Okay. Here we go.
So this here is this has actually been around for a while. So we have this guy here. So this is going to press the grapes. So this is going to actually get them pressed and the juice going, so we can decide whether we're going to use it in blends or if we're going to use the varietal on its own. Just depends on how much we pulled through harvest, what else is here at the time, how we're going to utilize that. So one of the things that's kind of funny is that when you look at one of these tanks here, this big tank, for instance, so if that tank is full and you were going to drink a bottle of wine every day of your life, it would take you over 50 years to drain that tank.
Wow.
So there's an awful lot of juice. So one of the things that we use the tanks for as well, you'll see them sometimes where they're frosted up. That we're stabilizing the juice. We're stopping the oxidation part of it, so it actually stabilizes the juice, take it to the next step. Which is, I am not a cellar guy. I know enough to explain the wines, but we have a guy. His name's Christian. He's been here for years and years, and he's a great cellar person. He does all the babysitting. Anything Justin needs done, Christian takes care of that for us.
So when the wine comes out of this, then where does it go next?
Well, right, okay, so then we can take some of these, we'll drain it out, and it goes through a filtering system.
Okay.
So this is our filter here. It's a unit where you have all your filters between these plates.
Oh my goodness.
And the juice is pressed through here. So it forces the juice through all those different filters. I think it's up to a 26 stage, something like that, I believe. So it's a lot of filtering.
This is the only filter you've got for the whole winery?
It is.
This thing must never stop.
No, at that time of year it doesn't.
Wow.
It's so
small.
Right. So we also do it when we do the bottling process. We use it one more time to run to the truck. And that's just that one more nice clean filtering system.
Wow, okay, so
once we get past here, that's right. So where most of the wine's going to live eventually is probably going to be in some of these barrels.
Okay.
So we have 3 oak barrels that we use. We have a French oak, which is one of the more desired because it's a very light in the flavor that it adds to the wines. It gives a vanilla overtone. So when you read about vanilla or in wine notes, it was probably done in a French oak barrel.
Okay.
When you read about spice, or where they talk about spicy wines, a lot of times then a Hungarian barrel is used, which we also have. And then when you get that really robust oaky, that American oak that we're used to, it is American oak. And we actually have them from my home. I'm from Missouri, and we have a lot of white oak there, and some of these barrels actually come from Missouri.
Wow.
So that was fun to see that one day. I'm like, oh my gosh.
How often do you reuse the barrels?
Yes. So we can use them for quite a while. They will continue to do their flavor for a couple of years. then they become what they call a neutral barrel. So they'll still do the same job, but you're not adding any of the wood overtone to it at all.
Okay. So the newer the barrel,
the more oak you're going to get. Right.
So that's why they don't stay a long time. They're reused several times, and then after that you replace them.
Yes, that is right. And we're replacing new barrels every year. Just so we have those nice fresh barrels.
Are the barrels the key to the quality of the wine?
Absolutely, that is part of it. The barrels are a key, but the real key is your winemaker.
Yeah.
He's the one that's putting the magic in the barrel, and then the barrel does what it's supposed to do, what you expect it to do. But all the magic is really about your guy in the cellar, and the winemaker himself.
So then the wine stays in the barrels how long?
Well, it depends. So there's a variety of that. It depends on how long Justin decides to hold them, what might have to happen, where it maybe has not developed yet into what he's looking for. So the barrel will stay, but usually you're looking at 6-9 months. So a lot of this was harvested last year, and we bottled from some of them. So it just really depends on what he's trying to do. But a year or less, just kind of depends.
Okay. And at that point, all these barrels are emptied?
Eventually, eventually as they use it, the barrels will empty out, and then they'll reuse them for the next whatever they know. Now, Justin would know then that this is a 2-year-old, and this is all I'm going to get back out of the barrel. So then, he's adjusting how the barrel is getting used as well by the age of the barrel.
Right.
So it's quite a hands-on process.
Yeah. So earlier you told us how many bottles you produce a year out of the winery?
Yeah, I didn't. We're at that 15 to 18,000 cases. Cases, which is what keeps us in that boutique profile. So I believe once maybe you get above 25,000, I think you go to another level.
Right.
And I'm guessing that, but I believe that's what I've heard.
Basically, where we're standing now is where it happens.
It is.
I mean, outside where you were doing the destemming.
Right.
But between the crush and the tanks, and then moving it to the barrels.
That's right. This is it. This is where the juice lives mostly.
Right.
That's exactly right. Now that I've been in it for a while, is that sometimes wine tends to intimidate, people. Just a little bit. I think the terminology is a little scary for folks. I think just they don't want to be wrong. They feel that what they might explain about wine is not correct. Right. So they're fearful of that. Nobody wants to look like they don't know what they're saying. So what my process is, I'm trying to teach my staff here not only the typical tasting notes, but how does it affect you? What's the memory you have of that aroma? I've had some girls say, boy, that just reminds me of my grandfather when he made wine at home on the farm, or that reminds me of the time I was in DC and was smelling the cherry blossoms blooming.
Right.
I mean, it's amazing the different triggers that happen. So I teach my folks to explain things like that so people can relate as well, and they start thinking, oh, that reminds me, and I go, that's your tasting notes, so that's special to you, and it's something to share to all, because you can, I feel at that point you're describing it from your own heart, so it's the truth. So you're not, when you read things like there's a little tobacco in there, your average person's not going to understand, and I even sometimes go, yeah, okay, I guess. I don't get that myself.
Right.
So I try to be upfront about that. It's like, well, I know some of these notes say some of these things, but this is what I get, and this is where I'm at. And I think it just becomes more relatable to your average person, where they feel that, hey, one, they learned something, and they know how now to apply themselves to wines and explain later to their friends.
Now, there are people that say, I only like white or I only like red. Is there a clinical reason for that, or is it just taste, like you said?
Yes, a lot of that is personal perspective, personal taste. A lot of people, I believe, when they say they're not into the reds, they may not have been introduced to reds the right way. There is on the lighter side of reds, you can, it's almost like coffee.
Yeah.
So when you drink coffee your first time, or a beer, or anything like that, it's an acquired taste. Wine is an acquired taste for sure. Some people are more tolerant of the robust. Some people just are not. They just don't like that.
Right.
So when they say red or white, that's just kind of a common thing to say. But it doesn't mean that they would not enjoy some of the lighter reds.
Right.
They just haven't been introduced to the right thing yet.
That's right. So let's go see your tasting room.
So this is our tasting room. We've done a lot of things since COVID. Since we were shut down, we've repainted. We've really got it cleaned up. Of course, we're having to do the COVID sectioning off, keeping people safe, which has been our big concern here. I believe people have been keeping us going because they feel that they're safe here.
Yes.
I think we've done a very good job with that. So the flags I have on the wall, of course, the United States flag, that's us. Then you have the Argentinian flag, and then that's the German flag, which Mrs. Orfila is actually from Germany.
Wow, what a great combination.
So that kind of gives a nice overview of both of them. These are some of the award-winning wines that we've had through the years. This is, again, Leon, when he passed away. This is a bottle that salutes him and his time here. So, and this is just a smattering of the awards. You finally just get to the point where it's a lot of dusting.
Right, right.
So we kind of narrowed it down just a little bit to make it a little less of a chore, to move them and clean them. And
What I also find significant of Ambassador Orfila's background is because he's from Argentina. There's a strong Italian influence in Argentina.
yes,
So his family really had those roots, and as I remember, as you mentioned earlier,
Right.
in the early 1900s,
right,
they started vineyards in Argentina,
Correct.
which is in the spirit of Italy.
right, exactly.
That's what he brings to this winery, which is what I love.
It is.
And then I didn't know about his wife in German. The same.
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't get better than that.
Right.
So,
Right. That's
I mean,
exactly right. So there's a nice diversity
Oh, it's wonderful.
with what you have, knowledge between them and their loves, and so it just makes a nice couple.
Yeah.
And they've done just such a really great job here over
Right.
the years. I've only lived a very small portion of
That's
this. I get to enjoy and reap from what they've done through all these years.
Right. So the flags that we have on the back wall there are just...
Those are our state flags.
State
so
flags.
that's everyone's state. They're actually in alphabetical order, just so people can find their flag easier. They used to be kind of spread all over
I
back in the
remember.
day,
Yeah, I
right?
remember.
And they're like, well, where's mine? And it's like, well, they're not really in alphabetical order.
Right.
So
then so into the tasting room now,
Right.
Kevin, the guests come through the door,
right.
and then you greet them and talk about the tasting process here.
Right. So we haven't been doing any tastings through COVID, of course. So that's been kind of its deal. People miss that.
Yeah.
So what we're doing, though, we're actually going to change our process here a little bit. Again, we've learned from COVID just how we can make things better, and mostly better for our clients. So we're going to start going to flights instead of having to come back up for a separate
great.
pour all the time like we used to, which kind of mayhemish. And so now we're going to go where we're going to investigate what they might like. Like we're going to talk about do they like the whites, and they're not really into reds.
Right.
So we can give them a white flight and talk to them about that. Then we can also give that suggestion of, I think here are some reds that I would like you to give a chance. And then maybe you'll change your
Right,
mind a little
right.
bit. Maybe I can help you actually find some new things.
That's great.
So that's our job here. Our job is to help you explore yourself, not just explore our wines.
Right. And the beauty of the flight, Kevin, is that you don't have to buy a full glass of red wine and hope you like it.
That's right.
Okay, so
That's
you
right.
can taste again.
That's right.
And you just might discover that reds aren't
Just
bad to you.
Right.
And you might enjoy them as much as you might like your whites.
Right. That's exactly right. It's a little sampler, right? So to say. So also, I think what's really good about that is that if if there's something you don't like, not only have you wasted, your money, let's say, but also it also means that a lot of wine's not going down the drain.
That's right.
So it's good for both.
That's right.
And it really works out for both, parties. But I think the thing that's exciting about it too is that once they have their flight, it's their flight. They own it. We picked these. Here we go.
Right.
And so there's a little bit of excitement of what's coming. Yeah, it makes it really nice. So we're actually going to, instead of having the old paper, where people have, Escondido's too windy here, so we would have paper all over the city. So it's just not. I decided not to go that route. So we're actually having little license plates that we're adding to our little tasters.
Oh, lovely.
That will be, and then you can pop it out and say, that's the one I like.
Great.
So that's going to be a fun new thing for
very
us.
good.
So we're in the process. I got through all the prototyping. So we're in production now to make
Great.
those. So pretty excited about that.
So tell us now, you have small production because you're a boutique winery. So you don't sell retail.
Correct.
So the only way for a wine lover to explore is to come to the tasting room and taste.
That's right.
And then the second option is
to be an OWL Club member.
And OWL means?
OWL is, Orfila Wine Lovers. And you'd be surprised how many people don't know
What
that.
that is. Yeah.
Like, what's that OWL thing about?
Right.
Oh, yeah, and then you have to think for a minute. Oh, yes, Orfila Wine Lovers.
Now, in the spirit of complete disclosure, my husband and I are OWL members.
Yes, yes.
And we love it.
Which is awesome.
Which is awesome.
And being that, you can attest, there really are no bad wines here. That's also what makes this place so great.
Right.
Because, I feel so confident when I introduce someone to new wine that they're going to enjoy that wine for the day. Now, that may not be their favorite to take home that day, but they're going to enjoy it.
Right.
So that makes our job so much easier here. We are really blessed to have really great wines here.
That's right, you really do.
Yeah.
And particularly with the OWL Club, you get quarterly shipments. Well, we come pick them up.
Right.
Because as I said at the beginning, we're an hour from the village.
Yes,
So
right.
it gives us a reason to come spend an afternoon.
Right.
And we love your food selections here.
Yes, and they have grown quite a bit
yes,
too.
You have.
Yes.
It's great.
Yeah, thank you.
The other thing that's fun that I want to tell our audience about is what happens in August with the very popular Grape Stomp
Grape
event.
Stomp,
so tell us about that night.
Yeah,
Okay.
so boy, Great Stomp. So it's a big family affair. Everyone gets to come. The kiddos come, and it's really a big deal. You actually get to put your feet in grapes if you want to experience that, which is and let me just say, we don't use that juice. We're not allowed. I don't even think people would take it home. I'm just saying. So. But it's a really big, fun affair. They sometimes we have even had rides through the vineyard on a wagon with the trailer. So we let people really experience what we do here and get a taste of it, and kind of that old school process as well. So they can play around with that, even though we really don't do that anymore. But what's fun is that the old press that we have now actually kind of works the same way as if you're stepping on grapes.
Oh, really?
They're bladders, and they give that same feel, that same squeeze over and over as if you're stomping on them. So it's really the same process, just done artificially.
We came the last stop, and some of your guests dressed up as Lucy.
Oh yes,
with the headbands and the women
oh
out there
yes.
doing the
And of course, everyone thinks of that when they.
Which is wonderful.
Absolutely.
And the other special part was you had falconers flying their falcons.
That is true.
That
They have
was
come in
awesome.
sometimes.
That was great.
Yes. That guy comes actually a couple times a month, and he practices with his birds out here. It's really neat. Yeah, that's neat that they allow them to come here, and we get to watch it all.
That's
so
definitely.
yeah, it's a very personal touch with each other.
So tell us about the
Okay,
Ambassador
so
Syrah.
the Ambassador Syrah. So again, these are going to be grapes that were hand picked for this particular for the barrels to make the Ambassador. Syrah is our signature grape here. I believe we do 17 acres of the farm is in Syrah. It just does wonderfully here. The sun is right, the soil is right. It's just a great Syrah. So this is a 2018 is what this is. So we'll pour a little bit of that for each of us. And
it reads, the older the better?
That depends. You know, this is one of the things that I try to teach folks too, is that wine is kind of like when you have bass coming out of your stereo, for instance, a bass wave is kind of like a big rolling wave, okay? So wines do the same thing. They're always alive. And sometimes you'll find them at the top of their hill where they're just like, wow, that is so great this year. But sometimes through that process, they'll have kind of a weird year, and it's like, oh, wow, that's just not what I remember it to be. And then you'll try it again later on, and you'll see that it has changed again. So the wine does keep changing. And it does, they do get to a point where you need to drink the wine. It's just not going to get better. So.
Okay, well, let's try.
Let's try.
Great.
Salud.
Salud.
It smells so nice.
Oh, yes. It is Ambassador.
So, you know, this wine is going to have a nice blackberry jam kind of overtone. Yes. It has, let me get that slamming.
Get the legs.
Yeah, so it has some nice long legs there. So I'm spilling wine all over myself, but anyway. It's just a lovely wine. And this is a great way to introduce the red too. It is a bit robust, but it doesn't hang as long as some of the tannins aren't nearly as bad on the tail end. So this is a nice wine to introduce to people that have not experienced a lot of reds.
Great. Well, Kevin, I can't thank you enough. This was a wonderful tour. I know the ambassador founded the winery, but you're a great ambassador.
Oh, thank you so much.
Cheers.
I appreciate you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Before we leave this wonderful winery, we wanted to spend some time talking about the San Pasqual Valley. I mentioned it earlier about the significance with wineries, but indeed this winery and this valley is far more significant than just wine. In California history, the Battle of San Pasqual absolutely occurred right here in that valley. It was 1846, and this battle occurred between the United States Army and the Californios, who occupied this area of California. Californios were Mexican-born, but they were born here in California, and this whole area belonged to Mexico in the 1840s. And there were 7,000 of them in this area. And they were ranchers. They were horsemen. And they knew exactly what they were doing, and they loved this particular area. And what happened in the 1840s is General Kearny from the U.S. Army was dispatched to come here because, in fact, the Californios were getting restless. It seems that at this point, the United States government already occupied Northern California. And Commander Stockton sent his troops down here and began to put enforcements of different codes and restrictions, and they were unhappy with that. So they began to rebel. So General George Kearny came here from Texas, and he was dispatched from Texas. Well, he didn't know what he was facing. It was a 2,000-mile march, but he didn't know about the desert. I guess he didn't have GPS. So as he crossed the desert, he lost all of his horses because of starvation and the lack of water. So General Kearny had to put his troops on their mules, and they finally came to this beautiful valley to fight the Carnetos, the Californios. And it was interesting because he had planned to attack and surprise them, but in fact, one of his commanders jumped the gun and came early. And when that happened, 17 of the army soldiers were slaughtered because the Californios, being ranchers, lassoed them and brought them to the ground and stabbed them with lances. The next day, General Kearny had the guns, he had the cannons, and he was able to clear the area. But in essence, we lost the battle. The United States Army lost that battle. After that happened, Kearny limped his way down to San Diego. And believe it or not, 1846, the United States Navy and the United States Marines were already in San Diego. And that's where General Kearny hid. When he got to Los Angeles and the Americans won, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ended the Mexican-American War. This was not the Spanish-American War. That was in Cuba. This was the Mexican-American War. And what was so significant about that battle is that even though we lost, Kearny gathered his senses and his spirit and went on to win the war. And that treaty surrendered 1/3 of the Mexican territory. And we won California, Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico. 1/3 of the Mexican territory became part of the United States because this very valley, is where that battle started. So it is truly significant in the history of the United States, the history of California. And our dear friends from Californios, they really wanted to be here. They loved it here. They didn't want to go back to Mexico. It's too far away. But eventually they left. So when you come to see Orfila and you visit the San Pasqual Valley, think of the soldiers that passed here because it was a significant battle for the United States. And just in case you might remember, those of you that visited and viewed our show for Veterans Day, maybe you remember that we went to the Fort Rosecrans Cemetery in San Diego. And we took you to see a couple of grave sites, of the oldest grave sites in Fort Rosecrans. We mentioned that there were 17 grave sites there from the men that died right here in the San Pasqual Valley. They were the first soldiers buried at Fort Rosecrans that we took you to in November. Thank you for joining us this evening. We hope you enjoyed the show. We've had so much fun as usual bringing you these great destinations. Our goal today was to bring you wineries, ranches, and maybe a little romance. So we've had so much fun, and we've enjoyed this area. Again, we're a little over an hour from the village, but this is beautiful, beautiful territory, and it brings a lot of variety and importance to the state of California. The history is rich, the views are beautiful, and the wine is just as great. So thanks for joining us. See you next month, and come join the fun in San Diego County. Bye-bye.